This presentation outlines the research paper entitled Cross-Cultural Differences Between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States by Jennifer Burson, Leah Ritchie, Hebe Harori, Sarah Falla, and Samuel Lane, all from the University of Texas at Dallas. This slide provides an overview of the three countries' ratings on each of the 6 cultural dimensions measured by Dutch psychologist and anthropologist Geert Hofstede. As you can see, Australia, the United States, and the United Kingdom all share similar levels of power distance, individualism, masculinity, and indulgence. The countries differ slightly on uncertainty avoidance and most dramatically on long-term orientation. In the following slides, I will define each of these 6 dimensions, discuss the countries' ratings as compared to each other and as compared to other countries, and provide potential explanations as to why differences or similarities may exist between these countries on each dimension. The first of Hofstede's 6 cultural dimensions is power distance. Power distance deals with the extent to which the less powerful members of institutions and organizations within a country expect and accept unequal power distribution. The 3 countries all exhibit similarly low power distance, meaning that in these societies, people strive to equalize the distribution of power and demand justification for inequalities of power. Within organizations, hierarchy is established for convenience, superiors are typically accessible, and managers rely on individual employees and teams for their expertise. Both managers and employees expect to be consulted and information is shared frequently. At the same time, communication is informal, direct, and participative. Paradoxically, in the United Kingdom, there is a tension between the well-established and historical British class system, which emphasizes the importance of one's rank at birth, and the more modern belief that there should be no limit to one's ability to rise in society. The next cultural dimension in Hofstede's model is individualism. High levels of individualism can be defined as the preference for a loosely knit social framework in which individuals are expected to take care of only themselves and their immediate families. In other words, individualism is the degree to which a person considers him or herself primarily as a unique and separate entity responsible for his or her own choices and outcomes. Its opposite, collectivism, represents a preference for a tightly knit framework in society in which individuals can expect their relatives or members of a particular in-group to look after them in exchange for unyielding loyalty. A society's position on this dimension is reflected in whether people's self-image is defined in terms of I or we. Individualistic societies typically value the rights and choices of the individual, while less individualistic societies value the welfare of the group before that of the individual. Ratings for individualism were high for Australia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Each country values self-reliance, initiative, and, to a certain degree, meritocracy. The United States shows the highest scores of individualism among the 3 countries, which is reflected in the United States communication styles. Because of the country's higher geographic mobility, Americans are accustomed to doing business or interacting with people they don't know well. Consequently, Americans are typically not shy about approaching their prospective counterparts in order to obtain or seek information. Next on Hofstede's 6 cultural dimensions is masculinity versus femininity. The masculinity side of this dimension represents a preference in society for competition, achievement, assertiveness, and material rewards for success. On the other hand, femininity represents a preference for consensus, cooperation, and caring for the less fortunate. The US and Australia score 62 and 61 respectively on this dimension and are therefore considered to be masculine societies. Winner-takes-all attitudes and shared values that people should strive to be the best they can be provide the basis for behavior in school, work, and play. Individuals take great pride in their successes and achievements in life, and previous successes offer a basis for hiring and promotion decisions in the workplace. Conflicts are resolved at the individual level, and the goal is to win. With a score of 66, Britain is also a masculine society, highly success-oriented and driven. Again, we see an apparent contradiction in British culture. High value is placed on modesty and understatement, which is at odds with the underlying success-driven value system evident in the nation's highly masculine rating. However, in comparison to feminine cultures such as Scandinavian countries, people in the UK live in order to work and have a clear performance ambition. Reading between the lines is required to understand British society. What is said is not always what is meant. This difference in expression of masculinity, most apparent between the US and the UK, is a reflection of the United States' higher levels of uncertainty avoidance than the UK. In other words, in both societies we find the same underlying drive and ambition, but Americans show it up front, whereas the British do not feel the urge to avoid uncertainty to the same degree, and therefore do not always express pride in achievements on the surface. The uncertainty avoidance dimension expresses the degree to which the members of a society feel uncomfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity. Countries exhibiting strong uncertainty avoidance levels maintain rigid codes of belief and behavior and are intolerant of unorthodox behavior and ideas. Countries exhibiting low uncertainty avoidance levels maintain a more relaxed attitude in which at 35, the UK has a low score on uncertainty avoidance, which means that as a nation, they are quite happy to wake up not knowing what the day brings, and they are happy to make it up as they go along, changing plans as new information comes to light. As a low uncertainty avoidance country, the British are comfortable in ambiguous situations. The term muddling through is a very British way of expressing things. There are generally not too many rules in British society, but those that are there are adhered to, the most famous of which, of course, is the British love of queuing, which also has to do with the values of fair play. The US scores slightly below average, with a low score of 46 on the uncertainty avoidance dimension. There is a fair degree of acceptance for new ideas, innovative products, and a willingness to try new or different things, whether it pertains to technology, business practices, or food. Americans tend to be more tolerant of ideas or opinions from anyone and allow the freedom of expression. At the same time, the events of September 11, 2001 have created a lot of fear in American society, culminating in the efforts of government to monitor through the NSA and other security organizations. Australia scores an intermediate 51 on this dimension, meaning that context is more likely to predict behavior than culture. Every culture must maintain some links with its past while dealing with the challenges of the present and future. Societies prioritize these two goals differently. Countries that score low on this dimension, for example, prefer to maintain time-honored traditions and norms while viewing societal change with suspicion. Those countries with a culture that scores high, on the other hand, takes a more pragmatic approach. They encourage thrift and efforts in modern education as a way to prepare for the future. In the business context, this dimension is referred to as short-term normative versus long-term pragmatic. The United States' low score of 26 reflects a short-term orientation prioritizing tradition over pragmatism. American businesses measure their performance short-term, with profit and loss statements being issued on a quarterly basis. This also drives individuals to strive for quick results within the workplace. Australia scores 21 on this dimension and therefore also has a normative, short-term oriented culture. As such, Australians have a strong concern with establishing an absolute truth. They exhibit great respect for traditions, a relatively small propensity to save for the future, and a focus on achieving quick results. With an intermediate score of 51 on this dimension, a dominant preference. The last of Hofstede's 6 cultural dimensions is indulgence versus restraint. Indulgence stands for a society that allows relatively free gratification of basic and natural human drives relating to enjoying life and having fun. Restraint stands for a society that suppresses gratification of needs and regulates it by means of strict social norms. A high score of 69 indicates that the British culture is classified as indulgent. Likewise, Australia scores 71 and is classified as indulgent. People in indulgent societies generally exhibit a willingness to act on their impulses and desires. They possess a tendency toward optimism. In addition, they place a higher degree of importance on leisure time act as they please, and spend money as they wish. The United States can also be classified as indulgent with a score of 68. This, in combination with a short-term orientation, leads to some contradictory attitudes and behavior. The U.S. values the pursuit to work hard and play hard. The U.S. has waged a war against drugs, yet drug addiction in the States is higher than in many other wealthy countries. It is a prudish society, yet even some well-known televangelists appear to be immoral. These dichotomous phenomena further polarize politics in the United States and provide the conflicting values which lead to the struggle of achieving a work-life balance. In conclusion, there are more similarities than differences between these countries, and more variance among populations in the countries than variance between the countries' populations. In other words, while small differences may allow us to explain and account for slight differences in culture, these differences should not be used to further divide us, but rather to understand the underlying values of varying cultures. Exploring each dimension separately provides strategies for making interactions as positive and fruitful as possible. Understanding the culture of someone from a foreign country is a crucial first step to understanding the context in which they interact and make decisions. As Garrett Hofstede states, national culture cannot be changed, but you should understand and respect it. This has been a presentation on cross-cultural differences between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States.